Yeah, I got to get into my position. All right, let's do this.
Oh, yes. Everyone,
On the
soon.
string. Let's talk about the fire in Star Wars.
This is going to break the force. It's going to rewrite everything.
We're always going to blame Kathleen Palpatine forever. Like, we're always going to. Are the chickens all right? Yeah, I'm just watching Star Wars. From movies to video games, welcome back to Marie Plays It All. Today's episode is the review for The Acolyte episode 3, and I'm joined again with George and my brother Rob, and we're ready just to get into this thing. Whatever we're going to say, I can't wait to hear all your thoughts with my witch dance. Yeah. All right, George, let's get right into it. Tell us, what's this episode about? Episode 3.
So episode 3 is a nice little flashback that brings us to the beginnings of May and Osha's childhood. So we get to see where they came from and who they were raised by, which is by these witches, this coven that's pretty much is in hiding and trying to stay away from the Jedi and the Republic. But these kids are special. They have the Force, as all these witches do. And the Jedi are aware of this, and the Jedi want them because that's what Jedi do. I was going to say abduct, but that's not the right word. They recruit their younglings to join them and use the Force the right way. That's pretty much the episode. Of course, things go awry.
As things always do.
do.
My question is for you guys who know more about Star Wars lore. Are there witches in Star Wars lore?
Yes, to agree that I would say that the Night Sisters were considered witches to some extent, but I would just think they should be the Night Sisters. I think that's what there should have been, personally. I don't know. How do you feel, Rob?
So, can you elaborate a bit on the Night Sisters? Do you mean from Clone Wars?
Yeah, like from Clone Wars. Yeah,
Okay.
From Dathomir and everything, right?
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is that in 1994, I read The Courtship of Princess Leia, which was one of the EU books that came out when the EU books were really starting to get going. And that's where the witches of Dathomir were introduced and then later developed and apparently somewhat retconned in Clone Wars. Yeah, and the original witches were hardcore. They rode rancors. They were badass. So I thought this episode, I thought, you know what, they're probably gonna pull from, the Night Sisters. I don't know too much about them, and the original articulation of the witches of Dathomir. So I'm kind of going in expecting, dumbly, more badass witches. Something, all right, they're going to be riding rancors and they're going to be weaving spells. And they were a martial society that actually had men slaves. So a martial, matriarchal, Amazonian, hardcore society of witches. And they understood that, or they thought that to use the Force, they needed to cast spells, these sort of song and rituals. So the big question that the book raises is, can you have a more direct relationship to the Force? Which is what Luke was arguing. This is a 30-year-old memory, explaining to them. Or can you have an intermediary between you and the Force in the form of ritual and spells? So this is what was raised in that book, as far as I remember, these different approaches to the Force. But the witches of Dathomir were actually really cool. And in this episode, the witches are pretty watered down. There's not much to them. They're not that interesting.
Yeah,
So
even when
yes, there is a
compared to
precedent.
the Clone Wars version, it does not feel as potent.
I don't know the Clone Wars version. I haven't seen a lot of the Clone Wars because Star Wars and I got into a fight that could never be healed again. So I
You were
really
on
like
a
the Clone
break
Wars.
during that time. You were on a break.
Yeah. So I really like the Clone Wars. What I've seen of it, I thought Clone Wars was really good, but it made the prequels so much better.
Yeah.
But so that's my EU knowledge. That's based on a 30-year-old memory.
Okay, do you find that Star Wars does this sometimes where it's like there's a really good idea already made in Star Wars lore, but instead of going for the actual Star Wars lore and turning that into a show or a movie, they're like, ah, witches. Okay, let's make a way worse, dumbed down version. Or let's take this and make it a way worse. Like, oh, Princess Leia and Han Solo have a kid or have kids. Let's take that idea, but just make it worse. Or like, why don't they just take lore that's already there, already written, and take it and just translate it to screen? Why don't they just do that instead of making a whole new stories and making it just so much worse than what's already out there, already written? Why? Answer me.
I'd say it's
Don't
not
you
even
know?
Star Wars. It's Disney. Disney does that
Yes.
because
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah,
thing
yeah.
happens to Marvel too.
Yeah.
You know, they think they're adding more depth to something or making something more impactful for the viewer when the readers were like, we ever read this story and it was way better back then. Like we didn't need you to mess with it. And what it really truly is also, it's the creators. These new creators think that they can improve upon someone else's creation and they want to
Mm,
have their voice heard in some way, which I get as a fellow creator. It's like you always want to put your stamp on something in some way, but a good writer, a good creator knows how to work within the confines of the story. You know, it's like this is your playbook. Now, how do you work within that world? They don't understand that. All they know is their world. So they're like, well, I'm gonna take that, tear it apart. It's almost like a Rubik's Cube. They're taking those stickers off and they're replacing them to how it fits their narrative. And I feel like
mm,
that's what happens with Star Wars and Marvel under Disney tutelage.
mhm. When I say
Yeah.
why does Star Wars do something, I mean Disney because I know that they're owned by.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
How I understand it is that Disney gets Star Wars, wipes the EU quasi canon,
Hmm.
makes content that's not very good, panics, races back to the EU canon, and then kind of pillages a couple things that worked, like Grand
Hmm.
Admiral Thrawn.
Yeah.
Seemed to me
Mm,
obvious that the sequel trilogy should have been about Grand Admiral Thrawn.
mm,
No, it's our new thing. Like George is saying, we're these new creators that it's like they feel compelled to paint a new canvas rather than working with the landscape given to them and then like adding embellishments and like new characters here and there and focusing on different perspectives. It seems like it's a combination of ignorance and arrogance.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
They don't know the lore, but they think they know it better, and they're
mm.
going to insert themselves in a world that's already made, trying to almost overcome it rather than celebrating it.
And I think it's not even just they feel that they know it better, like the lore and the like original stories already made, but they know people better. They know what people actually want when really if none of it is what we want. That being said, let's dive more into episode 3. Okay. Well, first, okay, that was my number one question about lore. Are there witches? Are the witches using the force, or is it a different type of actual magic that they're using and it's not, wouldn't be considered like the force? Or is all magic or all powers in the Star Wars realm the force?
From my understandings of how it's ever been in movie and we'll say video games and books,
Mhm.
it's always the Force. You know, so
Okay.
even like when the Night Sisters or Night Brothers use the Force, because they're not necessarily Jedi or Sith, they're kind of like their own thing.
Mhm.
They're still using the Force and manipulating it in their own way. But you know, like how the Jedi and the Sith don't use the Force in the same way either. You know,
Mhm.
there's things like they have their Force lightning on the dark side, but a Jedi can't do that, you know.
Mhm.
So it's like it's kind of within that realm. They're still using the Force. So like this episode was supposed to be the episode that like breaks it. That was the thing every article and everyone says like this is gonna break the Force. It's gonna rewrite everything. I will admit I did not fully see that in this. I saw this as this, well, this is their culture, and their culture describes the Force in this way. Very much in the same way where it's like, if I'm raised Catholic, well, this is God to me. This God is God. But if you're, you know, a Hindu, then you have your own, you have Krishna and whoever. But there's still a God. Like, there's always like the main God. We're all worshiping that one God. We're just calling it a different name, you know? And
Mm.
that's kind of how I looked at this. Granted, she did feel the need to say that it's not the Force, but that's how they believe it to be. You know, they want to call it a thread, the Jedi want to call it a Force. But at the end of the day, it's all the same thing.
I
Okay,
agree
okay.
actually exactly with you, George. The way I understood it was that this is their interpretation of the Force. They interpret it in light of this concept called the thread. It was unclear if there were multiple threads like a weave or just a single thread that you tug on that all things sort of participate in. But it's not clear from the episode that this is a reinterpretation of like the metaphysics of the Force
Yeah.
itself, but that group, how the witches perceive it, which made me think about the original witches of Dathomir, that they understood the Force through the medium of spells and rituals. If they leave it at that, there's no rewriting of this Force. And in fact, I think there was a nod to midichlorians
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
when
Yeah. Yeah. I saw it.
Corbin took a
Yeah.
blood test. And
Right.
I will say, because I love consistency, the midichlorians are part of the lore and they cannot be forgotten. So when it was boasted that the sequel trilogy would not touch the midichlorians, that's bad. Like they're there. Make them interesting. And I think that's
Hmm.
why OSHA got the blood test.
Yeah.
I think so too. That's my first thought. Rob, was there anything you enjoyed
Yes.
about this episode? Was there anything that you liked about it? Any positives? I'm assuming there's mostly negatives. I'm just assuming. My
You
witch
know,
powers.
I will get to the negatives in a moment. I really tried to watch it again with an open mind.
Yeah.
Part
Yeah.
of me was curious to see what was going to happen next. The characters were almost growing on me just a little. I'm starting to like, I think Soul says dumb things, but I just kind of almost kind of like him a little bit.
Mhm.
But I really like the moment with Osha and the Wookiee. When she walked over to see him and he's kind of working, and there's just a little bit of like her childlike curiosity. She wants to, go out and see the world and the galaxy. And he's just kind of alone working on something. I like that. The kind of little, very quiet, subtle sort of connection between them. I thought that was neat.
The human-sized Wookiee. He
But
felt
the
he felt really small.
no, no, his body felt small, but his
Yeah, yeah,
head
yeah.
felt huge.
His head's
Like
a
he has
Wookiee
this.
head, but his body.
Yeah. Okay, thank
Well,
you,
I'm a
because that
small
felt
guy,
really
so
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but your head isn't like 5 times the size of your body. It doesn't look disproportionate.
Yeah. To me, he was a Wookiee runt. That's what it is. That's
hmm.
Maybe he's a kid. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, George, anything that you liked about it?
uh I will say I liked this episode more than I anticipated liking it. And I think I liked it more than the first two episodes.
Oh,
Now,
oh,
granted, the first two episodes, that's a low bar that you have to climb, you know what I mean? That's an ant low level bar, so it's not that hard.
okay.
But I felt like there was stuff in this because like I had read about this episode and I had heard some things already. So I'm going into it with some of those negatives in my head. And like after seeing it, I was like, oh, you know what? They actually portrayed this a lot better than I was led to believe. You know, the Force was explained in a way that I thought was forgivable. I think that Osha's reasonings for wanting to like leave and become a Jedi are reasonable. You know, I'd seen some things where someone was saying like, "Oh, she just randomly wants to become a Jedi." And it's just like, well, it's not that random. Like, I think like she is supposed to be our new Luke. You know, and Luke had this curiosity of the universe and the galaxy, and he wanted to explore that. He didn't want to be stuck on this desert planet. And I could see
Mhm.
that within this. Like you could see her within when she's at the tree, trying to get away from like her sister and have some me time. Especially like I've known twins. I've known a couple twins in my life. And there is usually that feeling of like, oh, I love having this person, but at the same time, I'd love to have my space. I'd love to have my time where I'm not with you and I don't have to see my reflection every day. I think that was represented in a decent way. So when the Jedi come, it's like, oh, this is my opportunity. Like this is my gateway to get out of this situation that I truly don't want to be in. I love my family, but I don't want to be stuck here. So I thought that was
Mm.
actually handled decently well. Visually, and maybe it's like I'm feeling like how you feel, Rob. Like things are really growing on me by the third episode. I'm trying to be more accepting. But the visuals of this and the backgrounds, I thought the set pieces felt a little bit better to me. Even like
Hmm.
the costuming of the witches felt just a little bit better
Hmm.
than some of the costuming that I saw in the prior two episodes. I have to give some positive. I think that's it. That all felt really good.
So I understand it that Osha's been reading a book about the Jedi somewhat secretly. Is that right?
Well, that was a drawing. So she drew some, like she saw what she was supposed to become.
Hmm.
Where did Osha learn about the Jedi?
Because you hear the mothers talk about it, that the Jedi are on the planet and they're doing stuff or whatever. So maybe she overheard them talk about the Jedi. Who knows how long they've been on the run? And I think there's definitely a lot of stuff that we have to like put together on our own on that front, where it's just like we have to assume that through passing they've heard about them. It'd be nice if more was said in front of them, so it's guaranteed. But that's how I kind of put it together.
I had a image of her in my mind, sort of in a nook with one little light kind of on her, and everyone
Like
else
reading
is
the
supposed to
book.
go to bed, and she's like reading or sketching, and just had this sort of pensive look on her face and a bit of wonder.
Like just like a 40-second scene just to throw in there. I feel like would
Something like that.
Yeah.
just like you guys. I know there's gonna be more scenes you guys are gonna rewrite probably in in this episode, which I love because I love everything you guys add in all the time. It's like that would have made it so much better. The only thing I really liked, we just talked. What's the actress's name who plays the main witch? We just talked
Jodie
about this.
Turner.
Jodie Turner Smith.
Yeah, I thought her acting was the best in the whole episode. Like I didn't mind her character. I thought she was good. I thought she looked cool. Her robes are cool, or like line down her face was cool. I like the way she looked, and I thought her acting was good. That's probably the only thing I really liked about the episode was her.
Have you guys watched the Wonder Woman movies?
Just
Specifically the
one.
first one. The first one.
I've seen the first one. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the relationship that Wonder Woman had with her mother and then
Oh.
also Robin Wright's character, who was like the one who trained her? That trio, that relationship felt recreated here with the mothers. So like there was the mother with the horns who looks like
Oh.
honestly like one of the Night Sisters or one of the Night Brothers, like straight up because of the
Hmm.
horns. Like her demeanor with the daughters was very similar to how Robin Wright was with Wonder Woman in the first movie. I felt like it kind of mirrored it in a big way.
So again, another type of thing from a different movie that they took and
Yeah.
they put it in, like The Fugitive. Okay, Rob, tell me all your grievances with this episode.
Grievances. In general, I was pretty bored. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted something to grab my attention or be, really exciting. But a couple things that are rapid fire here is that I wouldn't give a Glock to a child. So in Seoul, yeah, hey, do you want to go target shooting, Billy?
uh,
Here's a Glock. You want to check it out and hold
uh,
it? Don't worry, he's force sensitive. He'll be fine. They just pull out that lightsaber,
how close was that to his face?
and it
Yeah.
was right up. Now, Obi-Wan did give Luke the lightsaber for a little bit, but this is a child.
Yeah.
And you don't plop a lightsaber into the hands of a child. Like they tried to make Soul's relationship with her kind of tender and sweet almost, but other times I'm like, dude, you're manipulative. Like, bro, like exactly. Want some candy, kid? Like exactly what to say at the right time to that
uh,
child. But I think it's supposed to be genuine, but he knows what to say. Yeah, I thought that I get what they were trying to do, but it just like that's a dangerous move to give that to the child. The another little thing that just bugged me, again, this is small, but they're deliberating on what to do with the Jedi, and then suddenly there's a discount witch Yoda that Salt
Oh,
tries to
what?
solve it. Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can lie. Like where were you? It's kind of out of nowhere. It's like,
Uh,
okay, at the Ascension, I'm watching this. I'm like, am I just not getting this? But the Ascension was kind of boring. Like, here's this big ritual, and then she ascends literally by stepping up. And like Osha ascends, like, and what was it? Just to make a promise that she will not betray the clan?
pretty
I thought
much.
something was going to happen.
Yeah. Something's gonna come out of that pit. Like, I don't know, there's
Yeah.
gonna be something like magic going into the, but
Well,
no, she's got like a tattoo and then
and
I
that, yeah, and
thought
that,
when she was doing that little like force power to her head. You saw like a
Hadouken.
blue, right? That's exactly what it was. It was a Street Fighter Hadouken. It was street, but like you saw a bluish glow on her head, right? And I thought she was like reading her mind to prove that there's like, all right, yeah, you passed the test, you've done it. But then she did it to the other one who was clearly lying. I was like, well, I guess you're not reading her mind then. What's the point of this? You can't tell when your daughter's lying to you. Yeah, it felt like it served no purpose whatsoever.
The Jedi together seemed disorganized and somewhat incompetent again.
Yes.
There's little
Yes. They
things
don't.
like Torben just stabs her with a needle. No bedside
No
manner.
warning.
No.
Um, Idara's the leader, but then Soul did some things that were dangerous, like I said, pulling out the lightsaber. It was unclear whether or not whether or not the Jedi were going to take the children no matter what was going to happen, because she promised we're not going to take them. Are they going to pass the test? Also, Anasia deferred the ultimate judgment to Osha,
Mhm.
whether or not to go. So I didn't really see that there was a conflict here with the Jedi. The Jedi came, they had a slightly disagreement, and then Osha, if she wanted to leave, could leave. Like the sister
So,
didn't like it, but also like with Soul, when he, is beside Osha when she wakes up, Soul just kind of rambles on about what happened. Your sister's dead, your mother's dead, don't worry, you can be a Jedi. Like immediately when a traumatized child wakes up, you have to ease them into the fact that their life has been destroyed. It was like, here is the plot dump for you to tell you, like, right away, here's what's going to happen. I thought that was a little bit awkward. The Jedi are kind of awkward and bumbling and make weird decisions at weird times.
that is just the whole episode, every episode, but this episode I found especially, I'm like, it's just the script is atrocious.
Yeah.
I was laughing. I was laughing at the dialogue between the mother, the spiky one, and like to the children. And I was laughing at the children's dialogue to each other, and it felt like it was just like they were reading off a script, and it was like, "Hey, say your line now. Say your line." It's like you could see it being filmed. Like you could. It didn't feel like it had a good flow. It just felt like a choppy. I'm watching this not as a show that I'm watching it being filmed in front of me or something. Like, okay, cut, okay,
Rehearsal.
go here.
Yeah.
It was exactly like a rehearsal. Another question that I have is like, my notes was, so do Jedi have dominion over all the children? Can they just come take children if they have like a power? Like, I don't understand. It almost made the Jedi look kind of bad in a way.
I question if there's another part to this that we are meant to see, because this
Yeah.
definitely still felt like we're watching it from their perspective,
Hmm.
because through their eyes, specifically May, the Jedi are bad, and it's the Jedi's fault that all that stuff happened. Even though she burnt the place to the ground, it's the Jedi's fault. It's there
Yes.
because if it wasn't for them coming, I wouldn't have been forced to do this kind of thing.
Hmm.
But there's a lot that we don't see within that moment. So, like you said, Soul tells her, "Oh yeah, your mother's dead. They're all dead." But she ran right by her mom. Her mother didn't burn in the fire. Her mother was just laying on the ground. Those other women didn't burn in the fire. They were just laying on the ground as if so they died beforehand. But he's like, "Oh no, your sister, she burnt everything down." It's like, how does he know that? He wasn't in the hallway with her when she caused the fire to her room. Are you saying that all those fires that happened like that just happened because of her? It's like things aren't timeline wise aren't matching up with each other. So
Hmm.
I speculate that because there's that moment when she's with the mother's with Osha, right? And she's like, "This is what you want to do. Okay, I need to deliberate with the others, and I'll let them know that this is what you want to do. Like it'll be put into consideration that this is your choice."
Hmm.
And then we don't get to see that meeting.
Hmm.
So I think that maybe they're not all dead. I think they kind of pulled like a Romeo and Juliet thing where they took a little bit of poison and they're supposed to come back, but instead of like taking all the poison, they will, resurface. I think that this was all a ploy. I think that this was all a little thing to make us think that they're not alive anymore. And maybe May was a part of it to some extent. Maybe the mother's like, "Oh, go start like keep your sister in her room. Don't let her leave. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that happens." And her mind was like, "All right, I'll put a thing to fire and then I'll take care of it." and maybe May wasn't part of like the whole like, hey, go to sleep time kind of
Right.
plan. That's what I expected because the Jedi didn't do anything. Like we don't even see where the other Jedi are at. And for that matter, like, why are they even there to begin with? They didn't give them the whole night to like deliberate and decide this thing. Too many things are too convenient in that moment.
So, George, it's not bad writing. There's
Oh,
a
it's bad
real
writing. Oh, it's bad.
mystery. Yeah.
I just think in that moment, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much there. It's like, you're not giving us the whole story, which they shouldn't. There's this thing
Mm.
should unfold,
Well, the tantalizing thing is whether or not May's Dark Master is one of the witches.
which I think so. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that she's one of them.
I think it is. I think it might be. And it is, we didn't see that. I forget, always forget, like the other mother, spiky mother laying there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Movie rules. What are the rules of movies? If you don't see them die, they didn't die.
It's true.
And she's got the horns on her head, so
I mean, come on.
she's like the Darth Maul of
Those
the
horny people
Acolyte.
are
That's
always
what's gonna
evil.
happen.
Like,
What about you, Marie?
oh, I just found the script just so bad, and I found it's a shame the little girls acting and their play fighting, and they didn't feel there was no I feel like there's no chemistry yet in this show. That's why I found like their mama to be like the best one, because I actually felt like there was a little bit of care there, and there was like when she was like, you get to choose, and there I felt emotion coming from her and like actual tears. I was like, okay, I like this performance. But everything else I just find very dull and cheesy and boring, and I don't feel connected to anybody. I don't feel any sort of excitement. I haven't felt anything yet in this. And I feel things very freaking easily, okay?
Yeah, you
And I
do.
don't yes, I do. And I don't feel a damn thing for anybody in this. I'm just like, I want to care so bad. I love caring. Even if I hate somebody, I want to hate them, you know. I hate that person. They're so or it's like, oh, I love that person. And I hope nothing happens to her. I hope nothing happens to them. And I just don't care. I don't care yet. I'm not invested into anything. And I really want to be. I really want to be. But I also find like the editing and the choppiness and the jumpiness and the you don't have to explain everything, but there's no mystery. It's very one-dimensional, and I'm not invested in anything yet. Really.
I even wanted to feel some hate, and I didn't even get that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Me
Like
too.
I can even do some hate watching and indulging in sort of like the dark side, but I was overall just like, kind of bored. Just keeps going on.
Yes, I mean, I want to feel something too. Make me feel something. It's really not hard to make me feel something, and I for to not feel anything after 3 episodes,
Yeah.
something's up.
It's a neutral show.
It is.
Yeah.
Also, one more thing. My one last note is just the witches' song when they're doing their song.
No.
I was like,
My
and
wife
then
was
the
making fun of it
witches.
too.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. And like they what is it? The power of one, the power of two, the power of many, or whatever. But then also their chant that they're saying turned into the actual backtrack score of the actual episode. I was like, oh no, don't do it twice. Like, no, we don't need it to be like in it, but then above, like stop. I just found it so cheesy. Everything. There's that one witch, it won't pick up on my mic, but that one witch who's like wailing, like,
Yeah.
The backtrack was really distracting. Yeah, was there a weird wailing?
yes,
Yeah.
Like
this one
every
Yeah.
saw that
witch.
high pitched.
There was a lady on the right of like I think OSHA, and yeah, she's just
Yeah.
like
No, I'm not
Yeah,
joking.
man.
yeah, they focus on her a little bit.
My daughter came to me and she's like, I swear to you, she said, I think there's something wrong with the chickens because they're worried about the chickens being attacked by animals outside. And there's this high shrill coming from my bedroom where the chickens are outside. And I swear to you, they're like, are the chickens all right? I'm like, no, I'm just watching Star Wars.
It's a Star Wars,
uh,
not a chicken. A chicken is not being murdered outside, okay? It's Star Wars.
uh, see what happened with me. So Jen had got home just in time for me to be watching this, but she's not watching it with me. She's on her phone. She just came from work. She's decompressing. She's like, screw this show. She's on her phone. That chant starts happening of like the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. And she's just like, this sounds like math. I don't like this. I don't
Yeah. The square root of 2.
She's like, I don't like where this is going. And she got up and she left. She's like, I can't be around this.
So why does the galaxy reject them? The witches? Like what? Just because they have power? Like force powers?
My understanding, and I know people will take this the wrong way. They're gonna misconstrue this into some way where it's like, it's because they're women, it's because they're lesbian or whatever. I think it's because they use the force in a way that suits them. And that's not how you're supposed to use the force. You got to use the force the way the Jedi use the force. That's what I'm thinking it is right now. Now, granted, they could just be Sith, and that's what it really is, and the Sith don't use the force the right way,
Mm.
you know. And
Mm-hmm.
that's especially when they do mention the whole thing of the power of two, which both the Jedi and the
Yes.
Sith use a lot, and the Sith really do, I feel like, lean into that more than the Jedi do. So it's like there is a bit of that. That's my speculation. Who knows? Maybe it is because they're women. I don't know.
No, Disney wants you to believe that it's because they're women. Also, another question of mine having to do with fire. Didn't she just kind of set ablaze to Osha in like a stone room?
It was flammable stone, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's wood and stone.
Flint. It's flint. It's
There you
all
go.
made of flint. Okay.
Yeah.
Was it what was there wood? I just saw a bunch of
No,
stone.
I'm saying
I didn't
it's
know.
wood. I'm saying it's wood and stone. It's
It's wood and
what it
stone.
is.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. A flammable stone. Okay. They're getting fired all right in this show so far.
No, fire in this Star Wars world clearly has its own physics and anatomy. Like it's not the same mass that we know of in our world.
Right.
This is a different force altogether. All right.
Someone making YouTube video complaining about just like the fire, all about the fire. Like, let's talk about the fire in Star Wars, how it breaks from canon. Fire is now changed throughout the universe. It's been destroyed. George Lucas's vision of fire has been overturned by these arrogant writers.
Yeah, when I saw that scene, I was like, did fire just spread like in a matter of freaking 5 minutes? What the hell?
Oh,
I was
less
like, did
than
she
that.
pour gasoline over this place? And if she did, it was very patchy. The fire happened to miss all of the main areas that you would actually like put fire. It was just happened to be it was catered. It was around people, you know. There was a clear
Right,
path to
right.
get out. It's like I want to set this
Yeah.
place ablaze, but I want to be responsible about it. All right, I want to have a light show. There's a lot of goofiness in this show so far because like we kind of we talked about it with like the whole ball thing when they started doing that and she did this. I'm just like, are you serious? Like you couldn't think of any other movement like a traditional just a force move? Like even if you just like wiggled your fingers in some kind of way and like that, that's okay. Like even when I liked it when she did this to some extent, it's almost as if like I gotta hold back my hand because the power within me is so
Mm.
strong. I can't use two hands on my kids. Like that was
Hmm.
creative to some extent. But like this, so much of this, I was like, this has a significant move for people like us geeks of all
Mhm.
sorts. It doesn't matter who you are, all right? You know what this means.
I thought it would have been cool if the witches actually used threads in their force powers and moves because of their sort of view of the force or whatever this thing is as a thread. Kind of like when they're casting their spells, like weave together these threads,
Oh,
and kind of
kind of like a cat's cradle kind of situation,
like
right?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like they do sort of like loom magic.
Ooh, loom magic.
Yeah, I thought that would be kind of neat. And then going back to the EU witches, where there's sort of concrete and distinct spells and rituals. It's that these spells and rituals are what give us access to this kind of energy that's woven around this thread, which you can pluck and pull. The art and the architecture, the way they use the force, their clothing could have like all this imagery of weaved patterns and knots and things like that.
Yeah.
It makes their clothing vers I mean, use you words, man. Their clothes become a utility. It's
Mm.
like there's a purpose to the clothes. It's not just to be
Yes.
worn, it's a part of everything.
Also,
Mm.
yeah, in many cultures, knots are actually used for prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
tie knots,
yeah.
all different religions, so like beads, like prayer beads, things like that, because it keeps
Yeah.
count
Mm.
of
Yeah.
your and it's of your prayers and also your memory,
Yeah.
remembering them. I think that would have been really neat to connect this thread to their actual rituals and materialize it.
Especially if they like there's that training of how to use the thread. Like we see them learning how to
Yes,
make these knots, how to use the thread. It's almost like it can mirror a Jedi having to find their kyber crystal and having to go through that
yes,
process.
100%. And then this is probably going too far, but the threads are like strings and they clearly have a song component. So
Mhm.
maybe they weave the threads a certain way and sing and they vibrate. And they think that these sort of vibrations can tap into the sort of cosmic thread and therefore manipulate space time. Something like that.
But
Just
that would make way more sense
I
because then
know.
when we have the ceremony, and again when we see her doing her thing, instead of her
Yes.
doing her Hadouken, she's doing the song with May. May produces a sound that correlates with what should be,
Yes.
synchronized with them. And then when she goes
Mm.
to Osha, her sound's different. Her sound doesn't resonate the
Whoa.
same way as everyone else. And maybe like as while hers was blue, hers is like golden, just represent this different light. Like that would have made
Yeah.
way more sense. And then
Also,
we're getting a visual and a sound effect that really lets us like, hey, wait, something's going on here. Things aren't matching up. We don't have to be told it. We're actually seeing the thing unfold.
Yes.
and also think about it this way too. Check this out. You have one thread, you have two
And
threads,
two
and when you
threads.
weave them together, they're stronger, right? It's the one and the
Yeah.
many through the weave.
Yeah. I was seeing that exact same thing, Rob. The exact.
And this is why it feels like a rough draft. Like even if,
Mm.
what I'm saying is going too far, um, to
But you
talk
have to
through
think that
those
deep.
kinds of
You have to
ideas.
think that deep
You have to
to
go that far.
That's
yeah.
everything feels very amateur in this
Yeah.
show so far. It feels like it's like a time crunch. It feels like I can't even blame it on time because Rob just came up with that right now and George just
Yeah.
bounced off it with his and that was just like what? That was like
A
what, 3
few
minutes?
minutes.
So the question is why is there no imagination? Why aren't they pushing more fantastical deep ideas? Why are they refusing to do that? Are they being told not to? This is what I mean. Are they being told to dumb it down? Is Disney being like, no, you can't go that complex and that deep because people are stupid and we're going to treat them like stupid and we're going to keep people stupid? Like, what is that? Was just a brilliant idea. I could see it in my head. I could see it. I could hear it. I was like, this is cool. This is awesome. What we got was a cheap ass Hadouken that made no sense, some weird wailing that sounded like a
Take my
dying
Glock.
chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah, take my Glock and dying
Yeah.
chicken wailing, and this is what we got. And then just like your family and everyone is gone. That was the episode.
There's an age-old problem, and that is the problem of the relationship between art, economics, and politics. And those three things. Art is at its best when it's autonomous, when the artist's imagination can explore new worlds and realms and characters and express itself in some concrete form,
Mm.
painting, movie story, all those sorts of things. And then you have political interests and economic interests coming in to intrude. And today, what we often see is that the economic interests are to water content down to have the largest possible audience.
Mhm.
So you can't take certain risks in storytelling, things that might alienate part of the audiences, or it's too lore heavy or too complicated. You make it safe, easy to digest, McDonald's form of storytelling. And on the other hand, the political interests are to use the art as a vehicle for some sort of doctrine, no matter what it is. And so if you are caught in that matrix, you have a temptation, or you could be one of these type of people that look at your art as a form of moral allegory. we want to make this moral point, so we're going to shove the art into this ideology. And this will also appeal to the economic interests because it'll hit the widest audience possible. And so you get uninspired art because the artist's imagination can't flourish on its own.
But what happens when someone shoves their ideology down your throat too much? Oh, then people start to revolt. And what if you have too much McDonald's and you eat that all the time? Then you start to get sick. So
Yeah.
who's going to
Yeah.
win?
And it doesn't even matter what the particular ideology is. It's the fact that it's when you're watching a show, you know that what they're doing is making one-to-one allegories between some contemporary event or some contemporary issue and then the character or the event in the art piece. And so it's like, okay, this is what your art is for. Your art is a vehicle, and then it pulls you out of the story. And then when you have economic actors wanting to water it down to make it as easily digestible to as many people as possible, no one likes it.
So who wins?
So that's what happens in the writing
well,
room.
well, they win. They get because they're still watching it. This is like I remember like back in the day, like so like in the 80s, there was this like saying with like there's no such thing as bad publicity. So like whether you did good or bad, you got yourself in the paper. So now like all eyes are on you. That's good. We want people talking about you. You know, I think now we're at a place where they've taken that and kind of ran with it in the wrong direction. So we're watching this show. We don't want to watch this show. We don't care for this show. If we weren't doing our show about it, we wouldn't be paying any attention to this. You know, both me and Rob gave up on watching Star Wars. We weren't going to watch any more Star Wars. But then this happened, and we're like, all right, I'll hate watch it. And they're like, okay, hate watch it. That's good. You had to pay us for Disney Plus. We got your watch hours. And now when we do a report on this through like Hollywood Reporter or whatever, we can say we got this many hours of watch time, and that's all they care. That's all that matters. So that's where it's at now. It doesn't matter whether we enjoyed it or not. The point is we watched it.
It's us, the podcast people who like to watch things to hate review them and to hate watch. It's the podcasts that are keeping art crappy because we're all watching it to get our content out there to hopefully get our clicks.
Yeah.
So we're keeping the bad
We're not
stuff
helping.
going.
We're not helping our cause.
It's
No,
because
we're not.
of us. We're the problem.
Yeah.
Why do you think hate sells so much?
I mean, you look at it's like war. War sells. When you have a war, that's when you make the most money because then there's business out of it. Someone got to make some bullets, and that's what this is. They're making bullets.
Someone's got to make the bullets.
Yeah.
Hold this lightsaber, child. Want some ammo? It's incredible that this episode, which is supposed to rewrite the entire soul of George Lucas, didn't and wasn't even that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all the people that have been reviewing this episode have just been going overboard and exaggerating.
Oh yeah.
Quite a bit. Like I've been disappointed actually. After I watched this, there's some reviewers that I follow that I actually generally like. And after seeing this, I was like, I'm kind of disappointed in you guys. You kind of you took this out of hand. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't good, but it wasn't as bad as you made it seem. Like
I think those reviews that you watched, those people are just selling bullets, George.
They'll get more clicks.
They're just selling
they do
bullets.
get a lot more clicks than us. Yeah.
I mean, there you go. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Marie Plays It All with George and my brother Rob, where we reviewed and raked through the coals again, the hot stone on fire coals. Episode 3 of The Acolyte. Next week we'll be back with episode 4, right, boys?
Yep.
You can find more of our content on our YouTube channel, Not a Strong Start. You can like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. Comment below what you guys thought about episode 3. Let's get into some civilized arguments. I would love that. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Not a Strong Start. Sorry, Instagram and X at Not a Strong Start. You can follow me on Instagram at Marie Plays It All. Where do we find you, George?
You can follow me at Nicolopolis on Instagram and Twitter.
Never stop playing and never stop weaving, guys. With one, the power of one, the power of two, and with us, the power of thrice. That's us. Hadouken!
Hadouken!
Pork.